The letter was folded into thirds and tucked beneath a peanut butter sandwich, the way she always tucked notes into things. I found it at 11:47 on a Tuesday in the faculty break room at Ridgemont High School, seated between a microwave that smelled like burnt popcorn and a motivational poster about teamwork that had been hanging crooked since September. My name was written on the front in her handwriting. Not my first name, my full name, Thomas Allen Voss. She never used my middle name unless she was being serious, and she never used my last name unless she was being careful. I didn't open it immediately. I set it on the table and ate the sandwich first because I thought it was a love note and I wanted to enjoy it. That's the kind of man I was on a Tuesday. The kind who eats a sandwich before reading his wife's words because he assumes the words will be warm, because they always had been. Margot and I had been married 11 years. We met in a hardware store. I was buying a miter saw. She was returning a deadbolt that didn't fit her apartment door. I offered to install the right one. She said only if I let her buy me coffee after. I installed the deadbolt. She bought me coffee. 14 months later, I was standing in a courthouse holding her hand, while a judge read us a paragraph that made it legal. There was no ceremony, no guests. She wore a green dress and I wore the only tie I owned. And we drove home and made pasta and watched a movie and fell asleep on the couch with our shoes still on. That was the whole wedding. It was the best day of my life, and neither of us planned it that way. By the time I finished the sandwich, it was 11:53. I wiped my hands on my jeans, picked up the letter, and unfolded it. Her handwriting was steady, not hurried, not shaking. 3 pages, front only, written in the blue ink of the pen she kept in the kitchen junk drawer beside a roll of tape and a flashlight with dead batteries. The first line read, "Tom, I need you to read this today. Not tonight. Today." The second line read, "I'm not sick yet. I want you to know that. I feel fine right now. I feel like myself." I stopped chewing the last bite. My jaw slowed the way a machine slows when the power cuts. Something in my chest dropped, not like falling, more like a trap door opening into a room I didn't know was beneath me. The third line read, "Something is going to happen soon. I don't know exactly when, but I know because I can smell it." Not a metaphor. I mean, I can literally smell something wrong in the air, and I have been able to since Saturday. Saturday. That was 4 days ago. She hadn't said anything Saturday. We'd gone to the grocery store. She'd picked out strawberries. She'd laughed when I dropped a jar of olives in the parking lot. I kept reading. I've been watching the news differently than you, not the official broadcasts, the local feeds, the county health page, the vet school reports out of Purdue. There's something moving through Marion County that no one is naming yet. I called Dr. Linden on Sunday, and he told me not to worry. But his receptionist whispered to me before I hung up that 3 families on the east side of Greenfield had been quietly relocated. She didn't use the word quarantine. She used the word moved. My hands were steady because I was a man who built things. I taught teenagers to use table saws and lathes and planers. I had hands that didn't shake. But my breathing changed. I could feel it shift from automatic to manual. I was choosing each breath now, pulling them in and letting them out as if breathing were something I might forget to do. I folded the letter and put it in my shirt pocket. I had 6th period in 9 minutes, 22 juniors, woodworking too. I stood up, threw away the sandwich bag, and walked to my shop. I taught the entire class with her letter against my chest. I didn't read the rest until the parking lot. I sat in my truck at 3:20 with the engine off and the windows up. The parking lot was emptying. Buses pulled away in that slow carousel they always made, yellow and groaning, carrying other people's children home. I unfolded the letter against the steering wheel and started from the third paragraph. I know you'll think I'm overreacting. You always think that first and adjust later. That's not a criticism. That's the pattern, and I love you in the pattern. But I need you to not adjust on this one. I need you to take the first reaction, the one where you think I've lost my mind, and skip it. Just skip it entirely and go straight to the part where you trust me. She knew me. That was the problem. Not that she was wrong about my patterns, but that she was right about them in a way that made the letter harder to dismiss. She'd built the argument around my own psychology. She'd preempted every reflex. Here is what I need you to do. Pick up Lily from school on Thursday. Not Friday, Thursday. Tell them she has a dental appointment. Take her home. Pack the gray duffel from the hall closet, not the black one, the gray one. I've already put 3 days of clothes, her inhaler refills, and copies of both our IDs inside. Drive to the Tippett Roadhouse. It's Jim and Carol's old place. I left a key under the stone turtle by the back porch. I know it sounds insane. Do it anyway. Lily, our daughter, 6 years old. She was in Ms. Brennan's first grade class at Wexford Elementary, 4 miles from where I sat. She had a small face and serious brown eyes, and a habit of narrating everything she did aloud, as if the world were watching. Now I'm brushing my teeth. Now I'm putting on my left shoe. She had my jaw and Margot's mouth, and she talked like neither of us. She talked like a person who had arrived fully formed and was merely tolerating childhood. The next section of the letter shifted. The handwriting tightened. Not a tremor, a deliberate compression. She was writing smaller to fit more on the page. I went to the East Side Clinic this morning. I went because I smelled it again, that metal and sweetness, and I wanted someone to tell me it was nothing. The waiting room was empty, except for one man in a plastic chair near the back. He was holding his arm against his body the way you hold something broken. His eyes were open, but not tracking. I sat down across from him and said good morning, and he didn't respond. Not ignored me, didn't register me, like I was furniture. A nurse came out, looked at him, looked at me, and told me the clinic was closing early. I said I had an appointment. She said there are no appointments today. Then she leaned close and said, "Ma'am, if you don't have a reason to be on this side of town, go home." She didn't say it like a suggestion. I put the letter down, picked it up again. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if it's a disease or a chemical event or something no one has a word for yet. But I know 3 things. I know the clinic closed. I know that man was not asleep. And I know the smell is stronger today than it was yesterday. It's in the house now. It's in the bedroom and the hallway, and it's faintly on Lily's jacket from school. My phone buzzed. A text from Margot, sent at 3:18. "Did you read it?" I typed, "Yes." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Don't come home first. Get Lily." I stared at that for a long time. Don't come home first. Come home implies there's still a home to come to. First implies there's a sequence, and she's already running it. Get Lily implies Lily isn't safe where she is, and Margot isn't the one who can reach her. I started the truck. I wasn't ready to believe her. I want to be honest about that. I was not a man who heard his wife describe a collapsing world and leapt to action. I was a man who heard it and thought, she's been anxious before. She reads too many local forums. She once convinced herself the water smelled like sulfur for a week, and it turned out the neighbor was fertilizing with fish meal. But I drove toward Lily's school, because the letter didn't sound like anxiety. It sounded like preparation. Wexford Elementary was a single-story brick building shaped like a horseshoe around a courtyard with a rusted swing set and 2 basketball hoops with no nets. I pulled into the pickup loop at 3:41. Dismissal had ended 20 minutes ago, but the aftercare program ran until 5. Lily would be in the cafeteria with 8 or 9 other kids, drawing or reading or narrating her afternoon to no one. The front office was staffed by Mrs. Odom, who had worked the desk since before I started teaching. She wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and kept a bowl of butterscotch candies that no child ever took because everyone assumed they were decorative. I signed the early pickup sheet and wrote dental appointment in the reason column the way Margot told me to. Mrs. Odom didn't look up. She buzzed the cafeteria. Lily came down the hall holding a drawing of a house with too many windows. She saw me, and her face did the thing it always did. A brief flash of surprise that I existed outside of the morning routine, followed by a wide, unguarded smile that she'd probably grow out of in a few years, but hadn't yet. "You're early," she said. "Dentist," I said. "I don't have a dentist appointment." "You do now." She studied me for 2 seconds, then shrugged with her whole body the way 6-year-olds do, and took my hand. We walked to the truck. I buckled her into the booster seat. She held the drawing on her lap and told me about every window. "This one is the kitchen. This one is the bedroom where the cat sleeps. This one is the room where nobody goes." "Why doesn't anybody go in that room?" "Because the door is stuck." I pulled out of the lot. My phone sat in the cup holder. No new messages from Margot. The drive to Tippett Road was 41 minutes through farm country. Jim and Carol Hart had been Margot's great-aunt and uncle. They'd died within a year of each other, Jim to a stroke, Carol to what the family called giving up. The house had been in probate limbo for 2 years. It sat on 3 acres at the end of a gravel road behind a windbreak of old oaks. No neighbors within a half-mile. Well water, propane tank. A root cellar that Jim had dug in the 70s because he'd served in Korea and never stopped expecting the worst. I hadn't been there in 4 years. Margot went once a year to check the pipes and mow the front acre. I always offered to come. She always said she preferred to go alone. I assumed it was grief. Now I wondered if it was something else. Lily narrated the drive. She named the cows. She counted silos. She asked why the corn was taller than the truck, and I told her that's what corn does, and she said, "Everything does what it does." And I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. The sky was flat and pale. September light, thin and warm. The kind of light that makes Indiana look like a painting somebody started and walked away from. I turned onto County Road 600, and the pavement ended. Gravel popped under the tires. Lily stopped talking. She pressed her forehead against the window and watched the road. "Daddy," she said. "Yeah." "Why does it smell like Nichols?" My foot came off the gas. Not a brake, just a lift. The truck slowed on its own weight. "What do you mean?" "It smells like when you hold pennies, or nickels. That metal smell." She was right. I rolled my window down an inch. The air coming in was warm and carried something beneath the grass and dust. A mineral tang. Faint. Like a tool left in the rain. Like a mouthful of blood you'd taste after biting your tongue. Except it wasn't inside my mouth. It was outside. It was everywhere. I can literally smell something wrong in the air. And I've been able to since Saturday. I rolled the window up. "It's just the road," I said. "It's not the road," she said. And then she went back to looking out the window and didn't say anything else until we arrived. The Stone Turtle was where Margot said it would be. Moss-backed, cracked along one flipper, crouched beside the porch steps like it had been waiting for us specifically. The key was underneath. A single brass key on no ring, warm from the September ground. The house was smaller than I remembered. White clapboard gone gray. Green shutters with paint curling at the edges. A porch that wrapped halfway around with 2 wicker chairs that Jim used to sit in, while Carol brought him iced tea and told him what was wrong with the garden. The front door stuck, then gave. Inside smelled like closed air and old wood and the faintest ghost of Carol's lavender sachets, still doing their quiet work in empty drawers. Lily walked in ahead of me. She moved through the house the way she moved through everything, with the careful authority of someone conducting an inspection. She opened the hall closet. She looked inside the oven. She turned the kitchen faucet and brown water coughed out, then cleared. "This is the house," she said. "What house?" She held up her drawing. Too many windows. She pointed at each one and then pointed at the real ones. Kitchen, bedroom, and at the end of the hall, a door with a stuck knob. The room where nobody goes. I didn't ask her how she'd drawn a house she'd never seen. I didn't ask because I was afraid the answer would be something I'd have to take seriously. And I was already carrying more seriousness than my ribs could hold. The gray duffel was in the hall closet at home. Margot had told me not to come home first. That meant the duffel was already here, or she'd bring it, or I'd misunderstood something. I checked the bedroom closet. There it was. Gray canvas, packed, zipped. A luggage tag on the handle with Margot's handwriting. Open when you arrive. Inside, 3 days of Lily's clothes, 2 of mine, her inhaler refills in a Ziploc, a photocopy of our marriage certificate, Lily's birth certificate, both our driver's licenses, a small waterproof flashlight, $400 in 20s, a folding knife I'd never seen before. And at the bottom, a second sealed envelope with my name on it. I didn't open the second envelope, not yet. I put it in my shirt pocket beside the first letter and stood in the bedroom and listened to the house tick and settle and breathe around me. Lily had found the back porch. I could hear her through the kitchen window, narrating to the yard. Now I'm standing on the step. Now I'm looking at the field. Now there is a bird on the fence that is looking at me, looking at it. My phone rang. Margot. "You're there," she said. Not a question. "I'm here. Lily's here. Tell me what's happening." A pause. Not hesitation. Selection. She was choosing which words to spend. The east side of Greenfield is being evacuated. They're calling it a chemical spill, but there are no tankers and no hazmat. It's moving northwest. I can see the convoy from our bedroom window. Margot. I'm packing the car. I'll be there by 7. Leave now. I have to get some things from the basement. I'll be there by 7. What things? Another pause, longer. When I get there, Tom. I'll explain when I get there. She hung up. I stood holding the phone to my ear for 10 seconds after the call ended because my hand didn't want to lower it. Lowering the phone meant the conversation was real, and the separation was real. And the distance between us was something I'd chosen by following her instructions instead of driving home. I walked to the kitchen. I checked the propane gauge outside the back door. Half full. I checked the well pump. Operational. I opened the root cellar hatch in the pantry floor and climbed down 4 steps into the cold. Jim's shelving was still there. Dusty mason jars, canned peaches, green beans, tomato sauce with dates written in grease pencil on the lids. 2019, 7 years old. Some of it would still be good. Some of it wouldn't. I didn't know which was which. Margot would know. Margot always knew which things were still safe and which had turned. She didn't arrive at 7. She didn't call at 7. At 7:14, I texted her. At 7:30, I called and got voicemail. At 7:45, I put Lily to bed in the back bedroom and told her Mommy was coming soon, and she said, "I know," and closed her eyes as if sleeping were something she'd decided to do rather than something her body required. I sat on the porch in Jim's wicker chair and watched the road. The dark came down the way it does in Indiana farm country, not falling but rising, like the fields themselves exhale it. Crickets started. A dog barked somewhere southwest, steady and flat, the kind of barking that isn't directed at anything, just a dog reminding the night it's awake. At 8:22, headlights appeared at the far end of the gravel road. I stood. The lights moved slowly, bouncing over the ruts. Our Honda. I could tell by the way the left headlight sat slightly lower than the right. A deer strike 2 years ago that I'd fixed myself but never got perfectly even. She pulled up beside my truck and killed the engine. She didn't get out immediately. I could see her through the windshield, sitting still, both hands on the wheel, looking at me, or looking at the house, or looking at something I couldn't see. Then she opened the door and stepped out, and she was Margot. Same brown hair pulled back, same canvas jacket she wore for yard work, same way of standing with one hip cocked, like she was always halfway through turning towards something more interesting. She had a box under one arm and a plastic bin in the other. "Help me carry," she said. I took the bin. It was heavy. We walked inside without speaking, and she set everything on the kitchen table, and then she turned around and put her arms around me and pressed her face against my chest and stayed there for 11 seconds. I counted. I count things when I'm scared. It's what my hands do when they can't build. "I need to show you something," she said. She pulled back and opened the box. Inside were file folders, a handheld weather radio, a county road map with markings in red, and a spiral notebook with her handwriting covering every page. She opened the notebook to a spread near the middle. "This is what I've been doing since Saturday," she said. The pages were a timeline. Dates in the left column, observations in the right. Small, precise handwriting. Not a journal, a log. Saturday, 6 a.m. metallic smell, bedroom, duration, 40 minutes. Saturday, 2 p.m. Lily School, sent early dismissal email, retracted 10 minutes later. Sunday, clinic, east side, man unresponsive, receptionist warning. Monday, 3 more families relocated per county health FB group, deleted within hour. Tuesday, a.m. smell now constant. Present in kitchen, bathroom, garage. She turned the page. A hand-drawn map of our county. Red circles on the east side of Greenfield. A red arrow pointing northwest. A blue X on Tippett Road. "The arrow is the direction it's moving," she said, "based on the relocations, the smell gradient, and the wind reports. The X is here. We're upwind, at least for now." "How do you know this?" "I don't know it. I inferred it. I'm a woman who reads patterns, Tom. That's all I've ever been. I read the garden and the weather and the grocery prices and the school emails, and I've been reading this for 4 days, and it all says the same thing." I looked at her. She was calm. Not performed calm, actual calm. The kind that comes from having already spent all the adrenaline. "What does it say?" "It says, don't go back." The dog to the southwest had stopped barking. I noticed it the way you notice a sound, only when it ends. The silence it left was the wrong shape. Too clean, too complete. Margot turned off the kitchen light. "They follow sound," she said quietly. "And light, I think." She pulled the curtains. She moved to the next window. I followed her through the house, pulling every curtain, checking every lock. Moving in the dark by memory, and touched the way you move through a house that has suddenly become a different kind of structure. Not a home, a position. I read the second envelope at midnight by flashlight under a blanket in the hallway while Margot slept on the bedroom floor beside Lily. She'd refused the bed, said she wanted to be between Lily and the door. The second letter was shorter, 1 page. The handwriting was the same, but the spacing was wider, as if she'd written it slower, or as if she wanted me to read it slower. Tom, if you're reading this where I think you're reading it, then I made it. If I didn't make it, the first letter is the one that matters. This one is the one I wanted to write. I don't know how long we have. I don't know if I'm right about any of this. I might be wrong about the direction. I might be wrong about the smell. I might be wrong about everything except that I love you, and I love Lily, and I've been quietly preparing this house for 3 years, because some part of me always believed a day like this would come, and I knew I would not be able to explain it until it was already here. 3 years. She'd been preparing this house for 3 years. The trips to check the pipes, the trips to mow the acre. She'd been stocking the cellar, checking the well, replacing the propane, maintaining a fallback position I didn't know existed inside a marriage I thought I understood completely. I know that makes you angry. I know you'll feel lied to. You should. I did lie. By omission, by silence, by smiling when you offered to come with me and saying I preferred to go alone. I preferred to go alone because I didn't know how to tell you that I was afraid of something I couldn't name. And I knew if I told you, you would either fix it or dismiss it. And I didn't need either. I needed to prepare for it, quietly, without having to justify the fear to someone who would love me enough to try to talk me out of it. I sat with that paragraph for a long time. She was right. I would have tried to talk her out of it. I would have been kind about it, patient about it. I would have said, let's think about this rationally. Let's look at the evidence. And I would have meant it as love, and she would have received it as erasure. Because her fear wasn't rational. It was olfactory. It was animal. It lived in the part of her brain that could smell a thunderstorm 20 minutes before the radar showed it. And I would have trusted the radar. Here is what I want you to know. The house is good for 3 weeks if you manage the water carefully. The cellar has more than what you saw. There's a sealed bin behind the bottom shelf with medical supplies and a hand crank radio. The propane will last longer if you only use it for cooking. The well pump runs on the house. It's electrical, but there's a hand pump Jim installed in 1979 under the wooden panel in the cellar floor. I tested it in March. It works. If I'm with you, I'll handle all of this. If I'm not, you'll need to learn it. You're a builder. You'll figure it out. I love you. I loved you in the hardware store. I loved you at the courthouse. I loved you asleep on the couch with your shoes on. I love you now, reading this under a blanket, because I know that's where you are. She knew me. She always knew me. Every version of me that I tried to hide was visible to her through some frequency I couldn't jam. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope, and put the envelope in my shirt pocket with the first one. 2 letters. 2 versions of goodbye, one operational, one human. She had written both because she didn't know which woman she'd need to be when the morning came. Through the bedroom door, I could hear Lily's breathing. Slow and even. The whisper of a child asleep in a house she'd drawn before she'd seen it. The smell of metal was stronger now. It came through the walls. Thursday morning broke gray and still. No wind. The oaks in the windbreak stood motionless, like props in an abandoned theater. I woke on the hallway floor with a stiff neck and the 2 envelopes pressed against my ribs, inside my shirt. Margot was already up. I found her in the kitchen with the hand crank radio on the table, turning it slowly, scanning. Static, static. A fragment of a broadcast, a man's voice saying, "Shelter." And then a tone, and then nothing. More static. She kept turning. Any signal? One automated loop from Indianapolis. Emergency management. It says shelter in place and avoid contact with symptomatic individuals. It's been repeating since 4 a.m. Same cadence. No updates. What does that tell you? That whoever recorded it left the building. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway holding a stuffed rabbit named Doctor. She assessed us both with those serious eyes, decided we were not interesting enough to narrate, and sat at the table. "I'm hungry," she said. Margot made oatmeal from a canister she'd stored in the cellar. She heated water on the propane stove with the burner on low, door closed, windows curtained. Every action was calibrated, not frantic, practiced. She moved through the kitchen the way I moved through my shop, by muscle memory earned through repetition I hadn't witnessed. 3 years, I said. She didn't look up from the oatmeal. "You were out here 3 years, and you never told me." "I told you in the letter." "That's not the same thing." "No," she said. "It's not." I wanted to be angry. I could feel the machinery of anger assembling itself inside my chest, the pulleys and gears of betrayal, the familiar architecture of "how could you not tell me?" But the house was quiet, and the world outside was wrong, and my daughter was eating oatmeal, and my wife had saved my life by writing a letter I almost dismissed as a love note. The anger didn't have anywhere useful to go. So I let it sit there, unmounted, taking up space without moving anything. After breakfast, Margot showed me the rest. The sealed bin behind the bottom shelf. Bandages, antiseptic, antibiotics in blister packs with expiration dates she'd rotated. A suture kit still in its sterile packaging. The hand pump under the wooden panel. The root cellar's second chamber, a space behind a false wall that Jim had built during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and Carol had used for storing quilts. Margot had cleared the quilts and installed a sleeping pallet, a battery lantern, and a locking latch on the inside. "If something gets in the house," she said, "you take Lily down here and you lock this." "What about you?" "If I'm telling you this, it means I won't be here, Tom." She said it the way she said everything that mattered. Flat, clear, already processed. She had rehearsed this conversation in the car on the way here, or in the dark of our bedroom on the nights I slept through, or in the back of her mind for 3 years while I taught teenagers to build birdhouses and assumed our life was simple. I didn't argue. I memorized the latch. I tested the lock from inside. I counted the steps from the kitchen hatch to the bottom shelf to the false wall. 14 steps. I could do 14 steps in the dark. I could do 14 steps carrying Lily. I could do 14 steps with my eyes closed because my wife had measured the route for my stride and built the sanctuary to fit the shape of our bodies. Late morning. Margot stood on the back porch with the binoculars Jim kept in the coat closet. She was looking south. I came out behind her. "What do you see?" "Smoke. 2 columns, one near Greenfield, one further east." "Fires." "Not structure fires. Burn piles, controlled. Military burns by the look of the spacing." She lowered the binoculars and turned to me, and for the first time since she'd arrived, I saw something behind her calm that I recognized. Not fear exactly. Resignation. The face of a woman who had been right about something she desperately wanted to be wrong about. "It's here," she said. "Whatever it is, it's in the county." By Thursday afternoon, we had our first proof. Not the smoke, not the smell. A man. He came up the gravel road at 2:15, visible from the kitchen window where I stood washing jars for water storage. A man in work clothes, Carhartt jacket, jeans, boots, walking with a gait that was almost right, but not quite. The rhythm was off. One leg moved a fraction before the other was ready, like a puppet operated by someone who understood walking in theory but was losing interest in the performance. Margot saw him first. She put her hand on my arm, and we both stood still behind the curtain gap. He walked past the end of the driveway without turning. His face was visible for 3 seconds, middle-aged, stubbled, eyes open and aimed forward but not searching, not scanning, not reacting to the house or the trucks or the porch chairs, just moving. Heading northwest along the road with the same mechanical, almost rhythm, as if he had somewhere to be and had forgotten why. "Don't move," Margot whispered. I didn't. He passed the property line and kept going. We watched until the road bent and the oaks took him. "Was he?" "I don't know," she said. But that's what the man at the clinic looked like, present but not occupied. Lily was in the back bedroom, drawing. I checked on her. She looked up and said, "There was a man on the road." She said it the way she'd say there was a bird on the fence, observation without alarm. I nodded and closed the door halfway and went back to the kitchen. Margot was writing in her notebook. A new entry, Thursday, 2:15 p.m. Single male, NW trajectory, work clothes, abnormal gait, no eye contact, no response to visual stimuli, house vehicles. Duration of visibility, approximately 90 seconds. You're documenting. Someone should. Why? She looked up. Because if this ends, someone will need to know how it moved. And if it doesn't end, someone will still need to know how it moved. That sentence is the one I carry. Not the love letters, not the goodbyes. That sentence. Because it told me who my wife actually was. Not a prepper, not a survivalist, not a woman driven by fear. A woman driven by the conviction that information matters regardless of outcome. That recording is an act of faith in a future reader, even if the future is empty. We saw 2 more that evening. A woman in a hospital gown, barefoot on the gravel, heading the same direction. And what I think was a teenager, though the light was going and I couldn't be sure. Same gait, same trajectory. Northwest, all of them northwest. As if following a signal we couldn't hear, Margot marked each one. She noted times, clothing, direction, speed. She calculated their approximate origin based on the road geometry and concluded they were coming from the Greenfield side, funneling along the county roads the way water follows the lowest ground. "They're not hunting," she said. "They're migrating." Toward what? I don't know, but it's not us. We're off their line. She was right. The road bent north past our property, and they followed the road. Not because they understood roads, because roads are flat and clear, and bodies that have stopped thinking still obey the path of least resistance. We were behind a windbreak, off the road, on a gravel spur that dead-ended at our door, invisible unless you were looking. That night, Margot heated soup on the low burner, and we ate in the dark kitchen by the glow of a single candle behind a towel hung over the window. Lily ate her soup and told us about a dream she'd had, where the house had a basement that went down forever, and at the bottom there was a piano playing by itself. "That's the well pump," Margot said. "It hums." Lily considered this. "The piano was nicer," she said. I washed the bowls. Margot took the candle to the bedroom. I stood alone in the dark kitchen and pressed my hand against the window glass. It was cold. The September warmth had broken sometime during the day, and the night air was sharp. The smell was gone. I noticed it the way I'd noticed the dog stop barking, by its absence. The metallic sweetness that had been seeping through the walls for 2 days had lifted. I didn't know if that was good. Margot would know. Margot always knew which things were still safe and which had turned. Friday, dawn. The radio loop from Indianapolis was gone. Margot scanned for 40 minutes and found only carrier tones and dead air. One station, a college FM out of Muncie, was playing music. An automated playlist. No DJ song after song with no interruption, no station ID, no human voice. Just a machine playing what it was told to play to a city that might not be listening anymore. Margot turned it off. "That's worse than static," she said. I agreed. We established a routine because Margot said routine was the first defense against panic. Mornings, scan the radio, check the road, pump water, eat. Midday, check the perimeter, update the notebook, inventory supplies. Evenings, eat, darken the house, sleep in shifts. I took the first shift. She took the second. Lily slept through both. The man on the road had not returned. No new figures appeared Thursday night or Friday morning, but the smoke columns multiplied. By Friday noon, I counted 5 from the back porch. 2 close, 3 distant. The near ones had shifted from the controlled burn pile geometry Margot described as something wider and less orderly. Structure fires. Something was burning that hadn't been set on fire deliberately. I spent Friday afternoon in the root cellar taking stock. Margot's stores were more extensive than I'd realized. Behind the canned goods, she'd placed sealed 5-gallon buckets labeled in her handwriting. Rice, beans, oats, salt, sugar, powdered milk. Water purification tablets. A small camp stove with fuel canisters. 16 batteries in a Ziploc. The medical kit. A hand-crank flashlight. A paper county map marked with water sources, elevation lines, and 3 circled locations labeled Fallback 1, Fallback 2, Fallback 3. She had planned for retreat from the retreat. She had nested contingencies inside contingencies the way I nested joints inside furniture. Each layer held the next. Each plan assumed the previous one had failed. She hadn't built a bunker. She'd built a decision tree with the house as the trunk and 3 branches reaching toward a high ground. Lily found me in the cellar. She climbed down the steps and stood beside me and looked at the shelves. "Mommy made all this," she said. "She did. She makes things. Like you." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "You make things with wood. She makes things with time." I didn't know what to say. She was 6. She said things that sounded like proverbs from a language I didn't speak. I kissed her head, and she went back upstairs, and I sat in the cellar alone for 10 minutes, holding a sealed bucket of rice and trying to breathe. Margot spent Friday evening poring over her map. She'd been refining the red markings, the directional arrows, the circles around known evacuation points, the X's on roads she believed were impassable. She worked with the quiet intensity of a woman solving a problem that had one answer and no second attempt. I sat across from her. "Margot." She didn't look up. "Margot, put the pen down." She put it down, looked at me. In the candlelight, her face was younger than 41. The shadows filled in the lines that a decade of worry had drawn. And she looked like the woman in the hardware store holding a deadbolt that didn't fit. "I'm not angry about the 3 years," I said. I was. I'm not anymore. "Why not?" "Because you were right. And being angry at someone who saved your life because they didn't ask permission first is a luxury I can't afford." She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Her fingers were cold. They were always cold. 11 years of marriage, and her fingers never warmed. I used to joke that she was part lizard. She used to joke that I was her heat source. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Okay." The smell came back. An hour ago. It's different now. Sharper, closer. I inhaled. She was right. Beneath the candle wax and the old house wood, there was a new edge. Not the dull metallic sweetness of before. Something brighter, like ozone before lightning, like copper held in the fist. And I've had a headache since noon, she said. The candle flickered. The room didn't move, but the shadows moved. And for a half second, the house felt like it was breathing around us, inhaling through the walls. A headache, I repeated. Not a normal one. It's behind my eyes. It pulses. I looked at her. She looked at me. We were both thinking the same thing, and neither of us said it, because saying it would make it a fact instead of a fear. And facts have weight that fears don't. It might be the air pressure, I said. It might be, she said. We sat with that for a while. Saturday morning. Margot couldn't get out of bed. I found her on the floor beside Lily, curled on her side, eyes open, one hand pressed against her temple. She was breathing normally. Her skin was warm, not fever warm, just warm. But her pupils were different sizes. The left was larger than the right, by a margin I could see without a light. "Hey," I said. Quiet, neutral. The voice you use when you don't want your tone to become information. "I can still think," she said. "I know what day it is. I know where we are. I know your middle name. I know Lily's birthday." She was listing proofs of herself. She was giving me the evidence that she was still here, still Margot, still the woman who had packed the duffel and stocked the cellar and drawn the map. She was documenting her own coherence because she knew it might have an expiration date. Lily was still asleep. I carried Margot to the kitchen. She could walk, but she leaned on me in a way she never had before. Not dramatically, not collapsing, just listing slightly to the left as if her balance had been recalibrated overnight. I sat her in a chair and pumped water and brought it to her, and she drank it with both hands on the glass. "The headache is worse," she said, "and I can hear something." "What kind of something?" "Low, below speech, like a generator running underground. I can feel it in my teeth." She opened her notebook. Her handwriting was still steady, but the letters were slightly larger, as if she was writing for someone who would need to read this in bad light. Saturday, AM headache onset. Approximately 18 hours. Unilateral pupil dilation, L. Auditory anomaly, subsonic perception. Cognition intact. Olfactory sensitivity increased. Metallic smell now localized to own skin. She held her wrist out to me. "Smell." I leaned in. Her skin, the inside of her wrist where I'd kissed her 1,000 times, carried a faint mineral trace. Not the ambient environmental smell. This was coming from her, from inside her. I sat down. "We don't know what this is," I said. "We know what it correlates with. Correlation isn't Tom." She said my name the way she said it, when I was about to build a logical shelter she needed me to abandon. I've been watching this for a week. The man at the clinic, the figures on the road, the smell. It starts in the air, then it starts in the person. The gate changes last. I'm on day 1 of the person stage, maybe day 2. You can't diagnose yourself with something that doesn't have a name. I'm not diagnosing, I'm observing. And I'm asking you to observe with me. She pushed the notebook across the table. I'm going to keep writing as long as I can. Every change, every sensation, duration, location, progression. If it gets to the point where I can't write, you write for me. And if it gets past that, she stopped. Past that. Then you have the cellar, the false wall, the latch. No. Tom. I said no. You don't get to say no to gravity. You can only say where you're standing, when it pulls. I looked at her across the table. The morning light came through the curtain gap in a thin blade and caught the side of her face. One iris wider than the other. Both of them looking at me with the same steady, unbearable clarity. "I'm going to keep writing," she said. "And you're going to keep reading." She wrote all day. Saturday noon auditory anomaly, now bilateral. Persistent, not painful, almost musical. I'm able to identify the pitch. Approximately 40 hertz. Infrasonic, but perceivable through bone conduction. This frequency is below normal human hearing threshold. Implication: neurological alteration already in progress. Saturday 2 p.m. first motor symptom. Left hand tremor, intermittent, 3 to 4 second episodes. Grip strength reduced L side, R side normal. Cognition remains intact. Emotional regulation normal. No appetite change. Mild photophobia, sunlight from curtain gap, causes sharp orbital pain. Saturday 4 p.m., metallic smell now perceptible to Tom. Confirms not psychosomatic. Am producing it. Sweat, breath, possibly sebum. Lily has not remarked on it. Children may have a different threshold, or I may be rationalizing. Saturday 6 p.m. I asked Tom to test me. 5 questions: name, date, daughter's name, this address, and 1 question I told him to invent. I passed all 5. The invented question was, "What color was your dress at the courthouse?" And I said green without hesitating. Green dress, no guests, pasta, and a movie. I remember everything. I want that written down. I remember everything. I watched her write. I watched the way her left hand curled slightly inward when she wasn't using it. The fingers drawing toward the palm, like a flower closing. I watched the way her right hand, her dominant hand, still moved the pen with the same controlled, deliberate strokes she'd used in the first letter. I watched her look up every few minutes and find Lily in the room and track her with the focus of a woman cataloging the exact color of her child's hair in case the catalog is all she has left. Lily spent the afternoon drawing. She was aware of the change in the house's atmosphere, the whispered conversations, the closed curtains, the flashlight-only rule after dark. She didn't ask what was wrong. She drew. Page after page of houses, all with too many windows, all with a door that was either very open or very closed. Never halfway. A child's binary architecture. Safe or not, in or out. At dusk, Margot asked me to cut her hair. She said it was a practical request. Long hair is a liability. I didn't argue. I sat her in the kitchen chair and took the scissors from the medical kit and cut her hair to her jawline while she sat still and looked at the wall. The hair fell around the chair legs in brown curves, and I swept it into a dustpan and threw it away, and neither of us commented on the intimacy of it, because commenting would have made it a farewell, and we weren't there yet. After Lily was asleep, Margot sat with me at the kitchen table in the dark. "I want to write one more letter," she said. "You've written 2. This one isn't for you." She took a clean sheet of paper and the blue pen and wrote for 20 minutes. When she was done, she folded it into thirds and wrote Lily on the front and sealed it in an envelope and set it on the table between us. "Not until she's old enough to read it alone," she said. "And not until you've read it first." "When?" "You'll know." I picked up the envelope. It weighed nothing. It was the lightest thing in the house and the heaviest thing I'd ever held. "Margot?" "Yeah." "What does it say?" She was quiet for a moment. "It says her mother loved her on every day, including the last one. It says her father was brave when it counted. It says the house in the drawing was real, and she'll find it again when she's ready." She paused. It says, "Don't be afraid of the room where nobody goes." I put the envelope in the gray duffel beside the medical kit. Sunday, 5 a.m. Margot woke me by standing over me in the hallway. She was upright, both hands at her sides, looking down at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face. Not vacant, not hostile, curious. As if she was studying something she recognized but couldn't quite name. "Margot, I'm here," she said, "but the frequency is louder, and I can see differently." "What do you mean?" "The dark isn't dark. I can see heat, your chest, your hands, the pipe in the wall where the water sits. It's all orange." I stood up slowly. Her pupils were fully dilated now, both of them, black discs that swallowed the iris. She looked at me the way a cat looks at movement, tracking, assessing, not yet deciding. "I can still think," she said. "I can still choose. But the choosing is getting harder. There's a pull, northwest, the same direction they walked. I can feel it in my sternum." She sat down on the hallway floor and pressed her back against the wall. "I have maybe 12 hours, she said, based on the progression rate I've been documenting. The cognitive decline follows the motor decline by approximately 1 cycle. I'll lose fine motor first, then gross motor patterning, then spatial reasoning, then language. Emotional recognition goes last." "How do you know that?" "Because I can feel which parts are still loud and which parts are getting quiet. My hands are getting quiet. My words are still loud. My love is the loudest thing in me." She said it without sentiment, a clinical observation about the topology of her own dissolution. She was mapping herself the way she'd mapped the county red arrows for direction, X's for collapse points, fallback positions for the parts of her that might survive longest. "I need you to do something," she said. "Anything." "Don't follow me." She explained it calmly. When the cognition failed, her body would try to walk northwest. It would follow the pull. She would become one of the figures on the road, present but not occupied, moving towards something none of them could name. She would not be dangerous because the danger wasn't aggression. The danger was proximity. The smell, the frequency. Whatever was changing her would change anyone close enough for long enough. "You have to let me leave," she said. "And you have to let me leave while I can still choose to. Because if you wait until I can't choose, then you'll have to choose for me, and I don't want that on you. I won't let you walk out into... You won't let me." She smiled. The first smile in 2 days. It was Margot's real smile, the one that started at the left corner of her mouth and traveled. "You won't let me. I planned the house. I stocked the cellar. I drew the map. I wrote the letters. I cut my own hair in your kitchen while our daughter drew pictures of a house she'd never seen. And you won't let me." She reached up and took my hand and held it against her cheek. Her skin was warm, not warm like fever, warm like a stove that's been on for hours. The heat was coming from inside her, rising through the bone. "This is the last thing I'm going to prepare for you," she said. "My own leaving. And I need you to receive it the same way you receive the sandwich. Open it. Read it. Trust it, even when it sounds insane." I was crying. I want to note that for the record. I was a man who built things and didn't shake, and I was crying on the floor of a dead couple's hallway at 5 in the morning while my wife held my hand to her dissolving face and told me the most organized, well-documented goodbye in the history of love. She left at noon. She waited until Lily was eating lunch so the child would be occupied and looking down. She walked to the front door and opened it herself and stood on the porch for 1 minute, feeling the air. Then she turned to me and said, "The oatmeal is in the third bucket. Rotate the water every 4 days. Don't open the windows on the northwest side until the smell breaks." And then she said, "Tell Lily I went to check the road." And then she walked down the gravel path and turned north and kept walking. I stood in the doorway and watched her go. Her gait was still hers. She still had that hip cock, that half turn toward something interesting. She still moved like Margot. The change was in the destination. She was walking toward nothing I could see, pulled by a frequency I couldn't hear, following a direction that had already taken every other body through this county and aimed them at whatever waited at the end of Northwest. I watched until the road bent, and the Oaks took her. The same way the Oaks had taken the man in the Carhartt jacket 3 days earlier. The same bend. The same vanishing. The trees did not distinguish between them. I closed the door. I locked it. I sat down at the kitchen table where her notebook still lay open to the last entry, written at 6 a.m. in handwriting that had begun to slope. Sunday, 6 a.m. Motor decline accelerating. L hand non-functional for fine tasks. R hand compensating. Cognitive function present but narrowing. Perceptual field expanding, can detect heat signatures, subsonic vibration, and airborne chemical gradients with specificity. Emotional capacity, fully intact. This is important. Whoever reads this, the emotions go last. We are still in here. We are still us until the very end. Do not treat us as empty. We are full of everything except the ability to stay. I closed the notebook. I put it in the gray duffel. Lily came into the kitchen. "Where's Mommy?" "She went to check the road." Lily looked at me. Those serious brown eyes performed their inspection. She was 6, not stupid. She knew the road didn't need checking. She knew her mother didn't leave without her jacket. She knew the house had changed shape around an absence that was only 12 minutes old and already architectural. Is she coming back? I knelt down. I put my hands on her shoulders. I looked into her face and gave her the only thing I had, which was not the truth and not a lie, but the third option that only exists between parents and children. "She loves you," I said. "And she told me to take care of you. And that's what I'm going to do." Lily nodded. She didn't cry. She turned and walked to the back bedroom and picked up her drawing and brought it to the kitchen table and sat down and started a new one. This one had 2 figures, a tall one and a small one, standing inside a house with too many windows and a door that was closed. I sat across from her and opened Margot's map and started memorizing the route to Fallback 1. For the first time since Tuesday, I didn't need the letter to tell me what to do. The letter had already done its work. It had rebuilt me from the inside, replaced my own dismissive architecture with her careful, patient infrastructure, turned a man who trusted radar into a man who trusted the nose of the woman he loved. The house was quiet. The smell was fading. Northwest, somewhere beyond the Oaks and the gravel and the county roads, Margot was walking. She was walking because she'd chosen to walk while she still could. She was walking because the alternative was staying and risking us. She was walking because she was a woman who solved problems by moving through them, not around them. And somewhere in her dissolving mind, beneath the frequency and the heat and the pull, the last light still flickering, was the knowledge that her daughter was eating lunch, that her husband was reading her map, that the letters she'd written were folded in a shirt pocket against a chest that was still breathing. I know this. I know it the way I know how to cut a dovetail blind, the way I know which wood will hold and which will split, the way I know the sound a joint makes when it's seated right. She was still in there. She told me. She wrote it down. The first year was the hardest because the letters were still new. I read both of them every night after Lily fell asleep. The first letter with its crisp instructions and its clean panic. The second letter with its wide-spaced tenderness and its green dress memory. I read them under a blanket in the hallway where she knew I would be, using the flashlight she'd stored, breathing the old house air she'd chosen because it was safe. The letters didn't change, but I changed around them. In October, the line "I can literally smell something wrong in the air" read as proof of her gift. By January, it read as the first symptom she'd logged on herself. By April, it read as both, simultaneously, a woman observing her own infection and using it to save her family, because the observation and the infection were the same organ, and she couldn't turn one off without losing the other. The instructions degraded predictably. Margot had packed for 3 weeks. We stayed 11 months. The oatmeal ran out in December. The canned peaches held through February. The well pump worked until the seal gasket failed in March, and I spent 2 days carving a replacement from a rubber boot sole because I was a man who built things, and building was all I had left. Lily grew. That's not a metaphor. She grew 3 inches between September and June. Her voice dropped a half step. Her drawings became more detailed perspective lines, shadow, depth. The houses still had too many windows. The door was still always fully open or fully closed. But the figures inside the houses began to have faces, mouths, expressions. A tall figure and a small one. And sometimes, outside the house, a third figure walking away. Always walking, never looking back. In July, we moved to Fallback 1. I followed Margot's map. She'd marked the route with landmarks, a red barn, a collapsed water tower, a church with a metal roof that would be visible from the southern approach. Every landmark was exactly where she'd drawn it. She had walked this road. She had walked it multiple times, in multiple seasons, and recorded the permanent features and discarded the temporary ones. She had built a navigation system calibrated to the things that don't change. Fallback 1 was a fire lookout tower on state forest land at 900 feet of elevation. No road access. 2 miles of trail from the nearest gravel road. A cab with windows on all 4 sides, and a propane heater and a rainwater collection barrel Margot had installed herself. I know she installed it because her handwriting was on the maintenance tag wired to the drain valve. We stayed in the tower for 3 years. We watched the county below. We saw the migration patterns shift northwest, gave way to north, then northeast, then back to northwest in a long seasonal rotation, like birds, except slower and less purposeful. We saw the fires burn out. We saw the green come back. We saw once a caravan of vehicles moving east on the county road with headlights on in daylight. The first sign of organized movement in 14 months. Lily learned to read in the tower. I taught her with a county map in the notebook. She sounded out Margot's entries 1 word at a time, tracing her mother's handwriting with a finger that already had Margot's long bones and narrow nails. She read the clinical observations aloud in a small, clear voice that treated each word with the same grave weight. Motor, decline, accelerating. She didn't ask what the words meant. Not then. She stored them the way her mother stored canned peaches, sealed, labeled, rotated, trusted to hold. I read the letters every night. Not for the instructions anymore. Not even for the love, though the love was there in every careful sentence. I read them because her handwriting was the last place her hand still existed. The pressure of the pen, the slight rightward slant, the way she crossed her T's with a stroke that always extended past the letter, as if every word she wrote was reaching for the next one. Margot was a woman who reached. for the deadbolt in the hardware store, for the duffel in the closet, for the next fallback position when the current one failed, for the pen at 6 in the morning when her left hand had already gone quiet and her right hand was compensating, and she used what she had left to write one final entry for a stranger who might need to know that the emotions go last. That we are still in here. That we are full of everything except the ability to stay. I read it every night. I will read it every night. The letters do not change. I change around them, and they hold. Lily is 11 now. She reads the letters herself. She takes them from the gray duffel on the shelf above her bunk and unfolds them at the table and reads them the way her mother would, slowly, tracking every word, noting what has shifted in her own understanding since the last reading. She asked me once if the letters make me sad. I told her no. The letters are the opposite of sad. The letters are a woman standing in a kitchen before dawn, knowing what was coming, choosing to fold it into thirds and tuck it beneath a sandwich, because she believed the man who opened it would do what she asked. Not because he was brave. Not because he was trained. Because he loved her. And love her kind, the patient, structural, cellar stocking, map drawing, hair cutting, frequency reading kind, is a material. It holds weight. It bears load. It can be shaped with hands that are still warm into walls that stand after the hands have gone. I read the letters every night, not because they tell me what to do, because her hand is still in them, reaching for the next word. And I am still the next word.